You are listening to Creativity in Healthcare, hosted by Dr. Matthew J. Taylor, editor of the textbook Fostering Creativity in Rehabilitation. In this podcast, we explore the science and processes that enhance your own creativity and that of your related healthcare organizations. True healthcare reform hasn't happened yet, but working together, let's explore how we can nurture the next new evolution in healthcare delivery.
Welcome to Creativity in Healthcare. I'm Matt Taylor, your host, and I'm really excited because in today's show, I've got my good friend and colleague, Cheryl Vandermark, down from Chino Valley, Arizona, just north of Prescott, if you know the state of Arizona. And Cheryl was kind enough in our textbook to contribute not one chapter, but two great chapters. And so I thought we'd take a few minutes this afternoon to talk about her experience that led to that, but also what she's doing now and how she's bringing forward that new level, that new emergence of what rehabilitation can be, and in more broadly, I think, healthcare in general. So this is going to be a fun time. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you, Matthew.
And we'll have all your connections to your website and everything up at the on the show notes, and the show notes are at healthcarecreativity.com. So with that said, the one chapter that you contributed at the beginning of the book was about sustainability, struggle, and all the non-glorious parts of being creative, I guess we might call it. And so kind of maybe tell our audience what your process has been, kind of starting back from being a conventional PT, and then go from there.
All right. Well, I'll start at the present, which is I'm in my 33rd year this year as a physical therapist. And the last 8 of those years have also been working with integrating the world of yoga into my practice as a physical therapist. So I recall meeting you maybe at the very front end of that process. It was 2008. And
where was it? At a conference?
Or? No. I hunted you down. Actually, I did. I stalked you. It was great. You had written something for the journal for the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and in the piece that you wrote, you identified yourself as a recovering physical therapist. And as soon as I read that line, I'm like, that is so exactly how I feel right now. I wonder who this guy is. And then I saw you were in Scottsdale and I was in Prescott. So I've actually never done this before, but I just at that moment emailed you and asked you if I could meet you.
Okay.
And happily you said yes.
Oh, yeah.
And we've been friends ever since.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm glad you were in recovery too.
Yeah.
So that kind of started the process, and shortly after going through training to become a yoga therapist, I really had basically a professional identity crisis. That's probably a good way to put it. I so felt the rightness of the need to integrate the yoga therapeutics into physical therapy. I felt it was absolutely a big piece that was missing in the profession, and now 8 years further along, it's a bigger piece that's drastically missing in our profession. And I really just didn't know how to start bridging and integrating the two worlds. Like, on a visceral level, I understood the rightness of it.
Right.
And on a heart level, it just felt like you got to figure out a way to do this. So I spent a couple of years trying to stay in my traditional role as a physical therapist within a traditional outpatient physical therapy practice, but seeing a patient every 30 minutes and 3-4 hours into your day, now you've got 4 or 5 patients still that you're trying to keep eyes on. It did not allow me the level of presence that I think is required for all of us to hold therapeutic presence with each patient we're with in the moment when we're trying to oversee multiple other things at the same time. So I gave it my best shot trying to integrate the yoga therapeutics into that practice environment, but it just didn't work. And so I found myself this one day, and this is what led to me writing the chapter for Matthew's book. I found myself this one day saying to a patient who I had seen, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times over the 8 or 10 years I'd worked for this practice, and every other therapist in the practice had also seen this client who just kept coming back for more therapy. And the therapy, it wasn't doing what needed to be done for her life. Otherwise, perhaps she wouldn't have been coming back at that frequency. It's nice to have lifelong relationships with your patients, but maybe for different things, but not the same thing all the time. So at any rate, I had this conversation with this woman, and I found myself just looking at her and telling her, look, I've been in practice, 25 years, and I have never met an exercise fairy. Nobody's going to show up and do this for you. I just somehow felt no compassion for this woman in that moment. And I just was flat out with her about the need to take responsibility in her own healthcare. But the way that I was doing it it just rose up, and the fairy flew out of my mouth before I could stop myself from saying this to this woman. And she actually really needed one. She needed some process to find the motivation to do what she needed to do to improve her state of well-being globally, which went far beyond the exercises that we were providing to her, for her care of her chronic low back pain, and the gym scholarships and the pool scholarships, and providing. But you got to show up.
Right.
So that was the missing piece. Was what are we doing here? What's missing that this person doesn't feel motivated, and that we can't find a way to motivate her, in the therapeutic process, to become therapeutic with herself in her life with this problem.
And I think an important qualification for our listeners is you were also adjunct faculty. You knew about motivational interviewing. You knew all the stuff we were doing in the field. It's not like you were just somebody that wasn't aware of the broader things we were trying to do, right?
Correct. Yes, I hold a biopsychosocial viewpoint then and now, even more strongly now. And I just blurped this situation to this person, but it was a defining moment for me, because it showed me that I needed to step out of this struggle that I was in, trying to bridge these two worlds, and I was feeling increasingly frustrated in my own, ability to be therapeutic and to find ways to give my patients what I thought they needed to have in the environment that I was in.
Yeah, and in that situation, was it just you with wrestling with this, or did you have people you were confiding in? As for our listeners, I think a lot of people end up kind of isolated, and then when this urge to change, this creative spark shows up, if you don't have somebody you can go, this is kind of weird, but this is what I'm thinking. Did you have something like that?
Well, I think that's how I ended up on your doorstep, was looking around for who else is walking this path. At that time, in my practice environment, in my community, there was no other physical therapist trying to to bridge these two worlds. Everyone, you know, I had two separate worlds. I had my yoga world, and then I had my physical therapy world. And I was having really difficult time finding anyone else that seemed to think it was wise to try to integrate these versus keep them in separate, silos. And in turning to the resources that were new to me. Oh, there's an International Association of Yoga Therapists. I should probably belong to that. Let's see who surely I will find like minds, in here. And sure enough, it was like, wow, there's quite a lot of health professionals that seem to be populating this organization. So let's see, I can't be the only person feeling this opportunity. So it was a struggle, but it was exciting struggle. It was a creative tension, and I'm still in it 8 years later.
Sure.
It looks a lot different now than then. And in the interim, my short-term solution was to change my environment. So I changed it drastically. I decided to figure out how does one do this bridging thing, and so I opened a movement art studio. Nobody, of course, knows what a movement art studio is, so in my mind that's what I call it, but that's not what the sign says. Just says body language studio. And I'm 6 years into that process now, combining what I do as a physical therapist and a yoga therapist, both in private and group settings with people who are interested in really finding ways to empower themselves in their own well-being. That's what I do.
And this isn't on Rodeo Drive in Beverly
Hills.
No.
This is in fact, Chino Valley was voted the most redneck town in Arizona.
It was.
It was.
Man, you are asking for it.
Bring it on, baby. I didn't know that when I started, but I've since come to find out. So really what that has meant is that the majority of people who come to Body Language Studio, I have the honor and privilege of introducing them to yoga, which actually has been really helpful to my bigger process, which is how do we integrate these? Because you preach into the choir for those who know yoga practice and do yoga practice on a regular basis. That's not a hard sell, but to try to mainstream it for folks that normally would not necessarily think of yoga as an approach to overall well-being. That has been both the challenge and the opportunity in locating where I am, which is near my home. That was convenient.
Right.
But I wanted to make an investment in my own community because we didn't have anything out there.
Right.
It's 25 miles to the nearest next thing, to the YMCA or to the bigger burb.
Right. And so within that, then that's kind of why I solicited you for the chapter, because it's not like everybody just showed up in their Lululemons and you had a built-in audience, right?
That would be correct.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things for our listeners, creativity sounds like such a great idea. Mm-hmm. And it is a great idea. And it's who we are. It's the essence of who we are, right? But the good idea, the felt sensation that this is right, all of that, I think we can safely say is the easy half of a two-sided coin.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and as you said, it was also part of being a contributor to your community. How can I upgrade my community? But none of that has been easy or smooth riding by any chance.
No, it has not, and it's been. It has been struggle, as the chapter is named, and I am still sustaining, so that's good. Yeah. But it has certainly changed along the way. Needing to remain fluid and adaptive in one's creative process to to what's actually evolving versus
the reality,
versus your ideal or your idea. So it's been a great yogic practice to not remain too tightly held to what I originally envisioned at the expense of responding to that which is showing up day to day.
Right.
So
what's your personal practice that sustains you that way? I mean, you can't just think, I'll just be aware, right?
That would be correct. Well, I am the primary provider of that which I teach. So honestly, a huge part of what sustains me in this evolution of integrating physical therapy and yoga therapy are the practices of yoga. I spend many, many hours a week teaching that to groups, teaching that to individuals, and in that process you're involving yourself in the practice. And then I'm coming up on 30 years of marriage, and that too is part of a sustaining process.
Sure.
That I have a wonderful partner, and figuring my way through this in partnership with my soulmate is another part that sustains me.
And you guys have transitioned to the empty nest over the last
I
couple
was
of
going to
years.
say.
Right? I mean, that's so creativity doesn't just come in a silo, does it?
No. Some of the timing with this, honestly, I could see my kids had another year or two at home right when I took this leap to do the studio. So it kept me very busy through initial empty nesting time. Which has been important to me, but essentially what has sustained me through this time is the energy that is cultivated through the practice of yoga. It's been an exciting time. I'm a hard worker. I'm raised from hard work and stock. I'm a hard worker. I had no idea what I was in for in terms of just the volume of this project, what it would call for from me, that I didn't know it would call for in terms of just building all these additional skill sets that you think you have, but then you have to actually show up and
act and
be in them. Yeah. So it's required a lot of energy, and there was significant inspiration to do this, and that inspiration keeps being fed through the practice of yoga and through a commitment to physical therapy. I love physical therapy. I'm really afraid for physical therapy in today's environment. So I have some embers that are kept hot in there over the profession, and what can we do together?
Sure, and we've had these discussions many times, but the same concerns, I think, bleed into all the ancillary branches and the practice of medicine itself.
Absolutely.
Right? It's all those factors.
Healthcare in general right now.
So what you were saying there, it struck me because just the other, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, you had posted online the follow-up talk with the Dalai Lama at his recent visit in Madison, and in that, when they were asking him how do we make life better at this point, and he said very clearly, we all are social species, but it starts with individual practice, right? It's
absolutely
not
yeah.
And so it's stepping up and having some sort of way to regularly come in, listen to those visceral responses you described so beautifully, and particularly because so much of this work of bringing forward the new healthcare is, the book starts off, we've got that quote about it's going to be way different than Don Berlick's quote about we can't even imagine what it's going to look like.
No.
And so your microcosm of the, oh my gosh, I think is what we need to be aware of and be ready for as healthcare practitioners.
Well, one of the things that really struck me when I located my practice in the Prescott area is that Prescott, Arizona is a mecca for retirement. So treating as a physical therapist in that environment was really kind of a glimpse to the future of the silvering of America, meaning in terms of who we were seeing in our physical therapy practice and the extent of issues that these people are having, with their health, the issues way beyond the tissues in this population, and it was really challenging, even with all my years as a physical therapist behind me, to come into that population and look at the scope of their needs from healthcare and feel like, how can I meet this holistically, because it's much bigger piece than treating college athletes or
wrapping an ankle and
go
get them.
Which had been largely my practice environment before that, in a college health setting. So it really shook my what would you call it? It shook my professional confidence. Like, am I really, even with all these years, am I prepared to meet what's before me here in a way that really upholds our code of ethics and our standards of practice
and our best emerging science.
And
the science is right. It's not an opinion. It's what's out there.
How do you bring all this forward in a way, and include the deep connection with the patient that kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller as the managed care environment got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
so I got a sense that you have an idea about how that might happen. Is that what our little our little visual aid over there
we might get to that? So, Matt, you mentioned a few minutes ago the live stream program that the Dalai Lama was involved in on March 9th, I think it was, with University of Wisconsin-Madison and Dr. Richie Davidson. And if you haven't seen that, you can live stream it. YouTube
I'll put
it.
the link on the show notes.
It's very, very moving. And it was just what I needed, I think, in that moment to be reminded about the power of of each of us to make our personal changes, and then however small those personal changes are, recognizing that it's still a relevant piece, and you never know how far that ripple may go. So I went to bed that night, and overnight, in the middle of the night, I just woke up and basically started sketching this little graphic out that I asked you to bring.
So that'll be in the show notes, and if you're watching the video, you'll be looking at it right now.
Yeah, so it's just a simple graphic. I'm presently involved with a friend and colleague at NAU co-teaching the biopsychosocial and ethics and professionalism course for student physical therapists, and my colleague Karen Mueller is the primary faculty member there, and she has been a brave and courageous soul to take me on board as her co-teacher, because I am very much trying to create some of this bridging, like what does the yogic model have to bring to healthcare in general, and then perhaps to physical therapy specifically. And so essentially what I did was listen to the meme that the the world we make, the meme that they are putting forward based on mindfulness and meditative practices, the science of those practices relevant to neuroplastic change. The meme they're creating is that well-being is a skill.
Right.
And so with my yogic orientation, I listened to that and I said, well, yes, mindfulness and meditation, that is stillness. And if we understand our viewpoints about such things, that means that for that to exist, so must its opposite. What is the opposite of movement, of stillness? Well, it's movement, right? And so this just
So the title of this
statement of movement matters.
All right,
Movement matters.
From a physical therapist.
From a physical therapist, yeah. And I did put the little atomic symbol underneath to see if anybody gets that it's not only like important like it matters, but movement alters form.
Right.
So I'm really believe that that our profession needs to jump on this bandwagon of well-being being a skill, and to look at how movement, beyond just exercise, but how does movement shape the brain? Because everybody's really excited about how meditation and mindfulness shapes the brain, and there's a whole lot of us, myself included. Meditation for me is meditation in motion.
Right.
I do my meditative time. It's torturous for me to sit still. I grew up as a swimmer. My meditation was hours and hours moving, listening to my breath. And so to this day, for me, my individual and personal practice is the sit time, but it's also bringing a meditative state into how I move, and I work that into my day. And I work it into my time in the garden, and I work it into my time teaching. And in fact, to me, yoga is meditation in motion, the physical practices of yoga.
And if you're teaching a quality course, you're listening inside and teaching from whatever. I mean, that's what the good teachers do. They're just they're right. You're making. That's amazing.
All of that. So I'm going to try this graphic out on the student physical therapy class next week to see if I can say, this is what I've been trying to say.
Yeah.
Have I been saying this, or have I not been saying this? And does anybody think that's a helpful way to sort of focus this broader vision statement of the APTA?
Right.
That is reading, optimizing movement to improve the human experience. Transform society. Oh, I have to give the whole thing. Transforming society
through the optimization of the movement.
Right. It doesn't exactly roll off your tongue, does it? No. Okay. But yeah, it's a tall order because we are talking about transforming society. So I'm glad you said that because I have to add it to my graphic.
Right.
Put the piece that fit.
Yeah.
But like, what does that really mean? And it can go in a lot of directions. And I think there's a task force happening now within the APTA to look at what does this vision statement mean.
Right. And they need to first understand what transformation means, and they haven't yet. So that's okay. Mm-hmm. And it is my PhD emphasis. So I have a little bit of expertise in this stuff. But what I thought was brilliant about the talk with the Dalai Lama and Richie Davidson and that was the Dalai Lama. I guess the question asked of him was, how do we not make this a sectarian type of activity, right? And he was so brilliant saying, it's awareness. We're teaching awareness, and we're training mental focus. He says, get rid of meditation, get rid of mindfulness. That's going to be a barrier. And so it was so brilliant. And maybe share with the audience what the 4 skill sets for well-being were. The
4 tenets of well-being that they're identifying are resiliency. All right. I think movement is a big piece of that. Positive outlook. I think there's plenty of science that shows that when we move, we influence our mood.
Right.
Attention,
Certainly we are the attention deficit society.
Well, that's one of the things I like about mindful movement practices is because you can't really do them without your attention. Right. They demand, they draw you in. And then generosity. Generosity beyond.
What's that got to do with my physical movement?
So, 4 tenets that have shown up in the research around the neuroplastic changes in the brain. Okay, it was solid scientific support. Right. So I'm hoping to open a dialogue with a lot of our physical therapist friends to look at those 4 tenets of well-being and to offer your thoughts.
Yes.
to us.
And to our behavioral health people, because it's also been shown you can't just sit there and talk about it.
Correct.
There's got to be movement behind it too. So
correct.
How are we gonna mix this now that the science is out there and is telling us, and they so nicely have outlined that in very simple language, non-inflammatory language.
Yes.
So that becomes our challenge. So is that what's next for Cheryl?
I don't know, but I know that that I stepped out of my traditional physical therapist environment, and just for my learning style, I've always been an immersive type of learner. Yeah. So for me to really create the change in myself that I needed to create in this bigger process of integration, I needed to remove myself from the environment of habitual practice. And so then I've spent 6 years in the non-traditional environment, and that has been a wonderful process. But what's next is my original intention for all of this, which is how do you bring it back in? How do we bring it back in to the profession? And I really feel like I've spent 6 years in my own little movement laboratory, figuring out how to language this stuff, figuring out how to teach it in group for cost effectiveness.
Right. You've got the triple aim on there.
Got the triple aim on there.
Because that's what it is. It's cost effective. It's
yeah. And my daughter this morning, she said, Mom, how are you relating this triple aim to the neuroplasticity? And I said, well, that's a really good question, Catherine. Mm-hmm. And I said, the way I think about it is we get better at whatever we practice. Is a simple answer. So if we really start not just intellectually embracing the triple aim as something other people should be doing, but we actually do it, right. then practice that way ourselves. Shazam. Then that's how it relates for me.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely.
For each of us.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah. Now, if our listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to find you? Your website, your email? What's a good way to...
Yeah, the website has a contact tab, which is my personal email.
Okay. And what's the web address?
The web address is bodylanguagestudio.net.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes as well, and I'll have it on the video right now, so we can all these wonders of technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll probably change my graphic though. Fit the whole statement on there.
Okay. Yeah.
Before we post it,
we can do that.
Yeah. Instead of just cherry picking the part of it that I wanted to emphasize, we'll put the whole. That transforming society piece is kind of important too.
Right. and again, this past week, they came up with the data on climate for February, and they had the whole world map, and it was like
blew us out of
everybody's
the books, right?
Yep, hot. So we've got a fever. We've got to move to break that fever, right? And you're leading the way doing that. So keep up, and you and I have been co-conspirators. You've been kind enough to invite me into different environments, and I think I prodded you towards a few, and We'll keep doing that, right?
Yes. Find those people out there who are also inspired, maybe not in the same ways as you, but that have this fire, and just connect, because it builds.
In this day and age, that is one thing we can do. That's the upside of technology.
Yes.
We can podcast videos and all that sort of thing. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the invite.
Oh, this has been fun as always.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.